financial problems, elder law, tax problems, business matters, divorce, personal injury, bankruptcy, your life, your reality. Life is complicated. There is the law and there is reality. Welcome to Law and Reality, sponsored by Thav Gross. Now here's your host, Ken Gross.
Welcome to Law and Reality. Today's topic is the Flint disaster. So I don't want to say that the topic is a disaster, but the Flint matter is certainly a disaster. And the focus is on the individual. What are your options if you live in Flint? And it's easy to, if you watch the news media, and we're getting plenty of news coverage on the issue, the focus is all on, I think, trying to assess blame for the problem, and there's certainly plenty of room for assessment of blame, but you really don't see that much in the way of focusing on solving the problem or what should the individual actually do. We know it's a long-term fix. But I'll tell you, yesterday I went to make my coffee in the morning, and as I was making the coffee, I said to myself, what if I couldn't make my coffee? What if I couldn't shower and brush my teeth? What if I couldn't wash my clothes? What if I couldn't cook anything to eat? And as I said those things to myself, I instantly said, I know how I would react. I would be so mad that my skin would be curdling, and I don't know if I could control my outrage. So I empathize with, or sympathize with, the people of Flint, because if any of us was in that situation, all we would be doing is checking out to a hotel, to getting out of there and finding another place to live. It's a terrible situation. But
that's an option that some people have and some people don't have.
Right.
And with Flint, with about 104,000 people living in Flint, the majority, as I understand it, at 1.5 times poverty or below, it's certainly
not a viable option.
It doesn't become a viable option to go stay at a hotel. So we got to find solutions for what they can do.
Yeah,
well, I think it reaches beyond
too,
that.
Brian.
If you were in your position right now as a prominent attorney, how long and how viable could it be that you could live in hotels at $100, $200 a night?
No, you
$250 a night. So it's not your poverty level. It's 99.9% of the population. If they were forced to have to absolutely pick up and move elsewhere.
To move to. I mean, it's an untenable
situation. And how
situation.
are the schools handling this as well? Because we know we're sending children to school, and there's drinking fountains and bathrooms, and they've got to wash their hands.
That raises the next question that comes to my mind: is the government officials are telling you what you can do, and they're saying this is safe and this isn't safe. And if I was in that situation, I'd say, how can I possibly believe anything you tell me?
Well, let's start.
How can you believe government when government has crossed you? It's a tough situation.
Children, there is no acceptable exposure level to lead. Period. End of the discussion.
I'll completely, totally accept that from you. But I'm telling you this, that if it was any one of the four of us, I wouldn't, because I'm not a child and because I may be over 60, you're not going to convince me that there's an acceptable if you're the government, you're not going to convince me that there's an acceptable level of lead exposure that I can tolerate, because I don't believe you anymore. I don't trust you. I don't believe you. You have breached your obligation of trust to me. So that's a tough situation. Now, I thought back the way we got this TV show started and we got the radio show started, which was Financial Crisis Talk Center back in 2008 when the financial crisis came on. And it was, in some respects, the same thing. Everyone was talking about the disaster, but no one was focusing on the solution for the individual. And that's what we've always tried to focus on the show. So I said, it's the same situation again. We're going to see it all over CNN, Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and that's beneficial for the people of Flint because it puts the pressure on government that's needed. but no one's talking about solutions. I went to Google and I popped in Flint water problem. 34,300,000 hits. Wikipedia, CNN, Washington Post, New York Times, Detroit Free Press, those were all the lead hits. I then put in Google the Flint disaster, what are my options? Or what are your options? I put both searches in. Only 622,000 hits, and none of them focused on the individual of what they could do. Nothing about what should you do. It's all about state emergency declared, governors, this was a good one, governor's brand of corporate politics by The Guardian. Governor Snyder must decide whether ... What's missing from Governor Snyder's ... The latest on the Flint water crisis. None of it's focusing on the individual. That's what I want us to focus on for the rest of the show.
No, it's going to be.
What are your options?
No, it's going to be an interesting stat, and just if I can interrupt for a sec, is if you look a year from now, what percent of apartments become the decrease in the occupancy of apartments? I wonder if we're going to have just a total flight. That's going to be interesting.
What about who's going to sit in a restaurant and order food? Who's going to go to a restaurant in Flint? There must, why would you order? How are you going to know what level of exposure the food has had to water? Was the lettuce washed? Was the, obviously no one's drinking any glasses of water at the table, but that's probably been the case.
Well, isn't water critical? Brian was a chef. No, he was. What percent of the dishes that you prepared in the restaurant that you were a chef?
Water's in everything. It's washing the dishes, cleaning the food, you can't run a restaurant without water.
Well, here, let's focus this on what do we need to do. So what things do we need to assure for ourselves? One is we need a source of water supply. So I said to myself, where do you get that? So the first thought I had that came to my mind was, well, how many houses are on well and septic in Flint? So I went online to Zillow and I searched Flint homes for rent, well and septic, 0. Then I found 2 homes in the area, one in Clio and one in Columbiaville. 2 homes on well and septic. I would think that the rental value of those homes has gone up remarkably because they're not on, but I'm not sure what the proximity is in Clio and Columbiaville to the city. That problem is clearly a work in progress situation. Time will tell as to where it comes out, but we're going to come back and focus on solving the problem.
It's devastating, the effects of debt and foreclosure on you and your family. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross, our firm will solve your problem. Some fear the word bankruptcy, but in reality, it's a strategy to save your home and to eliminate debt. If you're in financial trouble, timing is critical. You need to take action now. We've been saving homes and eliminating debt for over 33 years.
Call Fav Gross 888-235-HELP. Carrying too much debt? Resolve your debt. Call Fav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Fav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
A lifetime of hard work. If you don't have the right plan in place, you can lose your home, your savings, and more. And you didn't come this far to lose everything. Samasco Law wants you to know that laws are changing. Today, the average cost of nursing home care is $85,000 a year. With proper planning, we can help protect your life savings and get you the Medicaid nursing home benefits you deserve.
How much can you afford to lose? Call Samasco Law today.
Tax problems are major problems. Don't let the IRS levy your wages and seize your assets. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross, our firm will solve your problem.
If you're behind on your taxes and owe money to the IRS, call Fav Gross.
We've been solving tax problems for 32 years. We stop wage levies, resolve unfiled returns, and obtain the best possible settlements.
Call Fav Gross today, 888-235-HELP. If you're retired and in a financial crisis, there is a way out.
It pains me when I see a retired couple exhaust their savings by paying credit card bills and for a home hopelessly underwater.
Fav Gross specializes in helping retired people in financial crisis.
You just can't keep paying until you're broke. You need to address the problem now.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
All right, welcome back. Before we go any further, I want to apologize to all the Clio residents when I referred to the city as Clio, but don't take any personal offense because I've always called La Jolla, California, La Jolla, California.
The question is how many
offending more people there.
How many Clios live in Clio?
I don't know.
Well, you
We'll
did
save
all
for
that
another day.
investigation. You didn't.
Let's
find
talk
out.
about property values. All right, so you're living in Flint, you own a home. What's the market value of your home right now?
Zero.
If you own a business, what's the value of your business as
Zero.
good as real estate? And can your business survive?
No.
Well, now that we have all the answers
There you
to the
go.
questions,
If if there is no solution,
Show's adjourned.
The answer is 0, 0, and no, because right now you have poisoned homes, poisoned businesses, and so therefore there's no survival when you're in a poisonous atmosphere.
Let me challenge you a little bit on that, but I don't disagree with you that it's a serious problem. What would you say the fair market value of the home is if you lived in Flint? I'll give you, first of all, Wikipedia gives a good definition of fair market value. Fair market value is an estimate of the market value of the property based upon what a knowledgeable, willing, and unpressured buyer would probably pay to a knowledgeable, willing, and unpressured seller in the market. You have a lot of difficulty there because if you're a seller, you're under enormous pressure because you have no water source. Buyer's going to be knowledgeable because he's going to know what he's buying into. The question is, it could be zero, or there could potentially be a big buying opportunity for an investor to come in and gobble up property on the assumption that the state and the feds will ultimately solve this problem.
Certainly from appearances at this time, if you look at the real estate market in Flint, there are many people that are going to want to sell their homes, and there are going to be a smaller pool of buyers at this time. And the value of the property is intrinsically less at this point because it's been harmed. Now, if they can erase the harm, value may come back.
I mean, think about the financial crisis for a second. The homes in 2010 that were selling in Royal Oak, Ferndale, Berkeley, were selling for about 30% of the price they're selling today.
If not less.
If not less. Market values were dramatically down. The financial crisis solved itself through the passage of time. The Flint water disaster is not going to resolve itself through the passage of time, but it's going to have to resolve itself somehow. There's going to be something that happens. And the other thing that I think is interesting and of note is I don't view this only as a state problem. And I think you'll see more and more of the news. Even on the 21st, the EPA chief responsible for Michigan, Susan Hedman, she resigned. And so I started looking into that, and you're going to be hearing more and more of it in the news anyway.
Isn't there historically been instances where there's been contamination to the water supply in residential areas, and what happened in those circumstances? My history's not 100% correct. There may have been some stuff with GM and all that in the past. I don't know. They come back.
Right. The bigger point that I saw in this is the EPA is not without responsibility. There's the federal law, Safe Drinking Water Act. They call it the SDWA, passed in 74, amended in 86 and 96. And I spent some time on their website, and this isn't the statute, but right on their website it says the SDWA mandates that states have programs to certify water system operators and make sure that new water systems have the technical, financial, and managerial capacity to provide safe drinking water. Clearly, the role of the SDWA and the EPA is to oversee the DEQ in the state and what was going on, and clearly they failed as well. And right off the bat, they were saying that she refused to disclose the report. They said it was confidential and a time lapse and everything heard. So I think you'll see federal money in greater amounts coming to resolve this problem as well.
I think President Obama recently just announced an $80 million
yeah, I just don't have any way
from
of
Washington. I don't know what it's going to be used for.
No way of knowing what 80 million or the 28 million that the governor I think put out there in his State of the State address. and then we've heard the Flint mayor say 1.2 billion, and I've heard other people say that's just a drop in the bucket from the standpoint of what's needed. That's going to take time. But here, now the question is, I own a house. And the house fair market value, I owe $100,000 on the mortgage. The fair market value on that house today, if anything, is maybe $30,000. Nobody wants to buy that house from me. So Brian, I want to go to you and I want to say, how does bankruptcy play into this? What benefits can I derive from using the laws that we have to improve my situation? For instance, if the house was worth $150,000 before the Flint water disaster and now it's only worth $50,000, I've gone from equity to no equity. Maybe I wouldn't have been able to file bankruptcy before. Maybe I could now file because the house doesn't have the market value.
That's indeed an option, because the federal and the state exemptions that you're allowed to keep if you file a bankruptcy, a Chapter 7 or a Chapter 13 for that matter, there's only so much stuff you're allowed to keep, and you can protect a certain amount of equity in your home. So if you had too much equity in your home before, you may not be able to file
Approximately
bankruptcy.
how much equity can you keep?
Well, under the federal exemptions, it's about $22,500 equity per person.
Husband and wife would be
Right.
$44,000.
And if under the state exemptions, it's around $37,500 equity.
So if before I had over $50,000, by filing I could, by now, as a result of the drop in market value where I've eliminated the equity, I could derive a benefit. We're coming up to the break. What I really want to focus on is this, because this is the hot issue, is if I file bankruptcy, what does it accomplish for me? And are there any risks relating to it? What if money ends up coming to me as a result of being a Flint victim? What do we do about that situation? Does that muck it up if you go ahead and file a bankruptcy?
Boy, you asked a lot of questions, and I think we'll talk about them after the break.
When we do, the first thing on bankruptcy I want to know is, if I discharge the bankruptcy, does that mean I no longer have to pay for the house and I get to keep it? I need an answer to that question first.
Is the debt piling up? Struggling to get by?
It's all about preserving future income. Bankruptcy is one option. When it's right, it's the least costly, most effective way to save your home, eliminate a second mortgage, and wipe out credit card debt. But you need to address the problem now.
We help people with bankruptcy. Call the experts.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP. Tax problems are major problems. Don't let the IRS levy your wages and seize your assets. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
If you're behind on your taxes and owe money to the IRS, call Fav Gross.
We've been solving tax problems for 32 years. We stop wage levies, resolve unfiled returns, and obtain the best possible settlements.
Call Fav Gross today, 888-235-HELP.
A lifetime of hard work. If you're approaching retirement and don't have the right plan in place, you can lose your home, your investments, and your savings. And you didn't come this far to lose everything. Putting a solid strategy in place with Samasco Law legally protects your assets as well as your wishes. Since a will doesn't cover you medically or financially, Samasco Law goes beyond ordinary asset management protection to safeguard everything you have.
How much can you afford to lose? Call Samasco Law today.
Carrying too much debt? Resolve your debt. Call Fav Gross.
You don't need to be broke, and you don't need to hit rock bottom. If you have income and you're struggling with debt, dump it. Think about the next 10 or 20 years. If you do what the banks tell you, you'll have nothing to retire with. There is a solution.
Don't waste your future. Call Fav Gross. We're experts at eliminating credit card debt. 888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP. If you're retired and in a financial crisis, there is a way out.
It pains me when I see a retired couple exhaust their savings by paying credit card bills and for a home hopelessly underwater.
Fav Gross specializes in helping retired people in financial crisis.
You just can't keep paying until you're broke. You need to address the problem now.
888-235-HELP. That's 888-235-HELP.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem.
It's devastating, the effects of debt and foreclosure on you and your family. There is a solution.
Worth Ave Gross. Our firm will solve your problem. Some fear the word bankruptcy, but in reality, it's a strategy to save your home and to eliminate debt.
If you're in financial trouble, timing is critical. You need to take action now. We've been saving homes and eliminating debt for over 33 years.
Call Fav Gross 888-235-HELP.
All right, welcome back. Let me do announcements before we get back into this bankruptcy issue with the house in Flint, with the property in Flint. Thank you for making a funny face, David. I want to welcome our Flint viewers. They're on Fox 66. This, certainly is germane to our situation. And people should know that Fav Gross has a Flint office, and we're here certainly to help. Be sure and listen to us Tuesdays noon to 1 p.m. Law and Reality Live with Cliff Russell, and also Saturdays 9 to 10 a.m. on WDFN 11:30 a.m. That's Law and Reality Dealing with Reality. Those are the two radio shows. Next seminar coming up is the Debt-Free Commitment. It is Wednesday, February 24th, 2016. That is from 6:30 to 8 p.m. at our offices in Bingham Farms. Seminars are always free. You sign up for them by going to lawandreality.com, or you can call 888-235-HELP. We cover all the possible avenues you can explore to minimize or eliminate debt, under the premise that if you get rid of the debt, you can take the money you're paying in interest, put it in the bank, and start accumulating money for savings and retirement, which is, to me, a major goal that people need to prioritize. We have another seminar coming up covering your legal and medical issues when you're older. That's Wednesday, March 9th, 6 to 7:30 p.m. at our offices in Bingham Farms. Pat Simasco, who's a co-sponsor, Simasco Law, of our show, and a frequent guest and regular on the show, will be speaking along with Brian and myself. You sign up for that at lawandreality.com or call 888-235-HELP. Free reports. We have a new report. If you remember, a couple weeks back we did a show on forming a business, and we got the idea of saying, where can you go for money sources from the standpoint of borrowing money outside of a conventional bank? So we put together a report called Business Formation and Loans and Grants for Small Businesses in Detroit and Michigan. It has 14 programs with contact information of where you can go to try and get financial assistance for your business, plus a section on what you need to do from a legal standpoint in forming a business. We also have the Retiree's Guide to Social Security from Pat Simasco and How to Save Your Home with Regulation X to Hidden Secrets. You get the reports free on the website, either lawandreality.com or thavgross.com. I want to thank Thav Gross and Simasco Law as our sponsors. Now back to Brian. I've got a house, I'm underwater, I'm in Flint. If I file a bankruptcy, if I qualify to file a Chapter 7 bankruptcy, I discharge the debt. What exactly does that mean?
You eliminate your personal responsibility to pay the underlying debt. If you want to keep your house, you're going to have to continue to maintain your mortgage payments.
If I don't maintain the mortgage payments, the lender could foreclose?
The lender eventually could foreclose.
Do you think they would in Flint?
This is an interesting question right now. With property being damaged, so to speak, I'm not sure that each lender will make their own decision whether or not they want those properties back in their REO, because they may not be able to sell them.
What's REO?
Their real estate.
Is that a song? Was a band?
Speedwagon.
Right.
REO Speedwagon. No.
Real estate.
Their portfolio of homes that they foreclosed on. Okay, so they may not want it back in their portfolio.
Okay, so that's an unknown. But from your standpoint, you have to assume if you stop making the payments, you have to be prepared for them to foreclose.
And you have to be prepared to exit.
All right, so if I file bankruptcy, I discharge my obligations, so then down the road they can't sue me on the debt.
Right.
But if I want to keep the house, I still have to make the payments.
And you have some options if you want to keep the house. At that point, because of the injury to the house, so to speak, you may be able to get a loan modification, which would be a non-recourse loan modification since there's no liability after the bankruptcy on the house. And you may actually be able to get some principal forgiveness because the bank doesn't want to take your property back. It may be some leverage that you have.
So let me summarize that point because I like it. The values of the houses are probably never going to be lower than they are right now in Flint. You take advantage, you file the bankruptcy. If things start turning around, while that process is going, you could apply for a loan modification if your income qualifies you so that you could then reduce the payment. and you might be able to get principal reduction in that loan modification as a result of the decline in property values. Those aren't guarantees, but they're options with no downside to trying them.
Right, and some of this federal funding that's coming in may be able to support the reduction in principal
Ken,
also. We don't know yet.
Let me put it in this perspective, and I want to know if Jenny and everybody else agrees. You said at the beginning of the show that you talked about the roots of the show, which was the 2008, 2007, 2009 financial crisis where real estate just totally plummeted. There was the bubble that burst.
Right.
The way I look at it is, as a practical result of what happened in Flint because of the water crisis, is they went back in time and they had another series of events just like what occurred across the entire country. Now this has occurred in Flint. Property values, as you said, are probably the lowest that they're going to be. And there may be speculators out there, and they've got their own financial crisis as well as their health crisis that has occurred. And what happened then is individuals had to figure out what tools were available to them to get out of that hole. And that's how our entire financial crisis division and program started, was analyzing what tools you could do. And I think a lot of the same tools are available. They just have to go back into the toolbox.
So
that's my analysis.
Your analysis is that you need to come in and analyze the situation to look at what your options are. Let me, right? Is that a fair statement?
But it's nothing that is that
We're down to
new. But you got to go back and find out what's there.
We're down to our last 2 minutes, and it may carry forward into next week. But there's another issue that's important in this. If you filed bankruptcy, Brian, then there's a trustee in bankruptcy. What if then the state comes back and says every homeowner gets $7,500 of compensation? You're not going to get $100,000 because the government's never going to give $100,000 to 100,000 people. You can count on that. But what if they come back and say $7,500 per family? Does that money go to you, or does that end up going to the trustee?
Well,
that's an important consideration.
To the extent that there's an available exemption, and since there is no equity probably in the homes, we have cash exemption to an individual of about $12,250 per person. So everybody that's in the home is going to arguably recover if there is a recovery. So only the person that filed the bankruptcy needs to worry about protecting their exemption.
And for that person, you might be able to use the exemption to do it?
Correct.
So it's one of the planning things you need to evaluate when it comes time to filing the bankruptcy.
There's a lot more planning that we need to talk about. But yes, that is one of them.
All right, let me kind of wrap it up. We're going to keep after the Flint project, just like Flint disaster, like everyone else. But we're going to do it from the standpoint of the individual in Flint in terms of what he can do to protect himself. We'll leave it to CNN and the Wall Street Journal to indict the governor and the DEQ head and everyone else. That's all going to happen, whatever's going to happen with regard to what they did. And I use the word indict kiddingly. I'm not saying there's any kind of criminal investigation. But we'll leave that stuff to them. Our focus is going to be on the Flint residents and what their options are. Now, right off the bat, if there's a lawsuit that you can get involved in, I don't see a reason not to, but make sure they don't ask you to pay for anything. We'll be back next week.